Good afternoon, everyone. So this afternoon, we will be discussing about psychoanalytic criticism. So when we say psychoanalytic criticism, it is a literary theory that analyzes text through the lens of psychology, particularly Freudian and post-Freudian theories. So it examines how unconscious desires, repressed emotions, and psychological conflicts shape characters, narratives, and themes. So when we say psychoanalytic criticism, is a way of studying stories, poems, or other writings by looking at the thoughts and feelings of the characters, especially the hidden ones they might not even know about. It uses ideas from psychology, especially from Sigmund Freud and others who came after him. So this kind of criticism looks at things like secret wishes, buried emotions, and inner struggles to understand why characters act the way they do and what deeper meanings the story might have. So the psychoanalytic criticism have different principles. So the first one is role of the unconscious. So when we say role of the unconscious, so literature reveals unconscious desires, fears, and conflicts. So characters may act based on hidden motivations rather than logical decisions. So in stories, characters don't always know why they do certain things. Sometimes their actions are guided by hidden feelings, like secret wishes, fears, or memories they don't even realize they have. So this is called the unconscious mind. So it means they might act based on emotions deep inside, not just what makes sense. So like for example, in Hamlet by William Shakespeare, so Hamlet delays killing his uncle even though he wants revenge. One reason could be that deep down in his unconscious, he feels confused or guilty about his own thoughts toward his mother or about becoming like his uncle. He might not know this, but it affects what he does. So psychoanalytic critics would say Hamlet's action come more from hidden feelings than from clear logical thinking. So that is what role of the unconscious means. So the next one is the Freud structural model of the mind. So the Freud structural model of the mind contains of three, which is id, ego, and super ego. Okay, so let us discuss first the id, which is the instinctual drives and desires, or the pleasure principle. Okay, so when we say id, this is the part of the mind that wants instant pleasure. So it's all about basic desires like food, comfort, and fun. So it doesn't care about rules or consequences. So like for example, if a child sees candy in a store and wants to eat it right away, so even without paying. So that's the id taking. I want it now. So it doesn't matter about the consequences. That's what the id means. So the next one is the ego. So ego is the rational self that mediates between the id and reality. So ego, this is the realistic part of the mind. So it tries to balance what the id wants and what the real world allows. So the ego makes smart choices. So like for example, the same child sees the candy, but instead of grabbing it, they think, I'll ask my parent to buy it for me. So the ego is working here, thinking of reasonable way to get what they want. Now the next one is the super ego. So super ego is the moral conscience influenced by societal norms. So this is the moral part of the mind. So it tells you what is right or wrong based on rules, values, or what you've learned from society. So like for example, again, if the child sees the candy and thinks stealing is wrong, so I shouldn't even think about taking it without permission. So that's the super ego guiding their actions. So together, these three parts are like a team that affects our decisions. So the id is what we call the do it now, and the ego is what we call let's think about how rather, and the super ego is Is it the right thing to do? So that is the second principle of psychoanalytic criticism. Now the third one is the repression and return of the repressed. So the repression and return of the repressed is psychological traumas or forbidden desires are often buried in the unconscious. So sometimes people push away painful memories or hide feelings they think are wrong or shameful. These thoughts don't disappear. So they get buried deep in the mind, which is the unconscious mind. And this is what we call repression. But later, those hidden thoughts can come back in surprising ways, like in dreams, actions, or even strange behavior. This is called the return of the repressed. So like for example, in a story, a character may have forgotten a childhood trauma, like being abandoned. As an adult, they might be afraid of getting close to others without knowing why. So their fear comes from the repressed memory, even if they don't remember it clearly. So literature often shows how buried emotions can influence characters' behavior, even if they don't realize it. So that is what the third principle means. Now the fourth one is the Oedipus complex. So it suggests that individuals may have subconscious desires for their opposite sex parent and rivalry with the same sex parent. So this idea comes from Freud. So it says that when children are very young, they may unconsciously feel closer to their opposite sex parent and feel jealous or competitive with their same sex parent. So it's not something they do on purpose. It happens deep in mind. And they usually grow out of it as they get older. So like for example, a young boy might cling to his mother a lot and get upset when she gives attention to his father. He might even say things like, I want to marry mommy, without really understanding what that means. So at the same time, he might feel angry or jealous of his dad for being close to her. So in these stories, this can show up when a character has a strong attachment to a parent and feels conflicted or competitive with the other. So like for example, in Hamlet, some critics believe Hamlet has an Oedipus complex because he's deeply attached to his mother and feels angry and disgusted that she married his uncle after his father died. So that is what Oedipus complex means. Now the next one is the dream analysis and symbolism. So symbols in stories may represent deeper psychological struggles. So in psychoanalytic criticism, dreams and even parts of parts of stories often use symbols to show hidden thoughts and feelings. So these symbols can represent things people are struggling with deep inside, like fears, desires, or memories. So just like how dreams can seem strange but have meaning. So stories might use objects, peoples, or actions as symbols for what's really going on in a character's mind. So like for example, if a character dreams about drowning, it might not just be about water. It could symbolize feeling overwhelmed by emotions or trapped by a situation. So that is what dream analysis and symbolism means. So the next one is the Lacanian psychoanalysis, and a psychoanalysis rather. So it emphasized the mirror stage, formation of self-identity. So the mirror stage is a theory by Jacques Lacan. So it says that when a baby sees itself in a mirror around 6 to 18 months old, it starts to understand that it is a separate person. This is how the self or identity begins to form. So but this also creates a kind of confusion. So the child sees a perfect image in the mirror, but inside, they feel incomplete. So this creates a lifelong desire to become that perfect version of themselves, even if they never truly can. So, like for example, imagine a person always trying to act confident and successful in front of others, even though deep down they feel insecure. So they're chasing the ideal self they think they should be, just like the baby chasing the mirror image. So, like for example, in literature, in The Great Gatsby. So Gatsby creates a perfect version of himself to win Daisy's love. So he acts rich, charming, and mysterious. But that version isn't who he truly is. So he's chasing an image just like in the mirror stage. So that is what Lacanian psychoanalysis means. Now, we're done in the principle of psychoanalytic criticism. Now, let us proceed to the focus areas of psychoanalytic criticism. So, the first focus areas of psychoanalytic criticism, here are the focus areas of psychoanalytic criticism. So, the first one is character psychology and motivations. So, what it means? So, looks at what's going on inside the character's mind, their fears, desires, and hidden emotions to understand why they act at certain way. So like for example, in Macbeth by Shakespeare. So Macbeth kills the king because of his ambition, but also because of deep fears and pressure from his wife. His actions show a mix of guilt, desire for power, and inner conflict. So that is what character psychology and motivations. So the next one is the author's side. So what it means. So tries to understand how the author's own thoughts, dreams, or life experiences may have influenced the story. So the author might be expressing hidden feelings through the text. So like for example, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. So after experiencing loss and grief in her life, some critics say the story reflects her feelings about life, death, and the fear of losing loved ones. So that is one of the second focus area of psychoanalytic criticism, the author's side. Now the third one is the symbolism and dream analysis. So when we say symbolism and dream analysis, so looks at symbols or strange images in the story like in dreams that represent deeper meanings such as hidden fears or desires. So like for example, in the Metamorphosis by Kafka. So Grigor turning into a giant insect is a symbol of his feelings of being useless and unwanted by his family. So that is what symbolism and dream analysis means. Now, the next one is the family dynamics and psychological conflicts. So what it means. So focuses on family relationships and how they affect characters' minds, like issues with parents, siblings, or past family trauma. So like for example, in Hamlet has deep conflict with his mother and uncle, which may be tied to hidden anger, jealousy, and grief after his father's death. So that is what family dynamics and psychological conflicts means. Now the last one is the reader's psychological response. So it studies how story affects the reader's emotions and mind. Why do certain parts makes us feel scared, sad, or uncomfortable? So like for example, a reader might feel uneasy when reading The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe because the narrator's madness and guilt are so intense. So it pulls the reader into his disturbed mind, creating emotional tension. So those are the focus areas of psychoanalytic criticism. And that's all about the psychoanalytic criticism. So, that's all. Thank you.